interviewing Gail Colby in her home on January 18th, 2015. The interviewers are Sarah McCracken and Jesse Duma. So can you state your full name?
Gail Frederica Bunker Colby. Because see, they had animals and things then, way back. And there was pictures of no trees on this island. When I was a girl, my mother would can everything, you know, preserve them and put them up for winter. She'd do the carrots, if anything, beets, and we raised our own potatoes. God, one year we had potatoes that was this big. We had a big garden. You can see it right there where it was. There was 2 stores here then.
Okay. And could you get all your groceries from the stores on island?
Oh, I guess so. My mother never went off. They lived out of that. That was a wonderful store. I had everything.
Where did you get your milk from?
We got ours from Carl Hardy.
Really?
Nice.
Would he deliver it?
No, he went and picked it up. 1.5 quarts a day.
How do you think like food production and eating food has changed on the island over the years?
Well, you didn't have supermarkets, that's for sure. You know, it was just more or less you did things yourself. You had your gardens and the store. It's a funny thing because I never knew you didn't have a good meal, you know. And I didn't know how that was about people because everybody here, we didn't have any. Well, probably we were poor in church mice, but they all had homes and food and heat. Well, we were really sitting on top of the world and didn't know it.
Hello. Hello, Midnight.
No, that's not, no.
No, I was saying hello to that one, and because she's in the camera.
No. These are La Mancha goats, and this one's Midnight. She's very stubborn.
All we're going to do today is check their feet. See here, the easy girl. See this little extra's kind of like your fingernails being too long. You trim that off because if we have a muddy time, they'll get infection in there.
Oh no.
Let's start.
My wife wanted goats. Dar wanted to get some milk goats, and we had some neighbors, some friends that had some. We've been buying milk from them, and we got 2, and we give it a try, and we enjoy messing with them.
Yeah.
We just kind of got used to having them around, and we started using them for other things.
Ow! Don't eat my shoe! Don't eat my shoe!
My name is Phil Whitney, and I live here year-round now on Great Cranberry Island in this house, which was my grandparents' home. My mother was Dorothy Sperling Whitney, and her parents were Elwood and Ella Sperling, and so she grew up here on Cranberry Island. I grew up in Southwest Harbor, but over the years in the 1950s, I would come out here and had some great adventures, great times. My grandparents would be called Mr. and Mrs. Sperling by the summer people, and Aunt Ella and Uncle Elwood by the year-round folk. Well, I know that in the summertime he was sailing for some summer people, which a lot of the islanders did in those days. But between roughly 1928, 29, 1931, he sailed for the Stotesbury family out of Bar Harbor. At that specific time in the winter, I'm not sure if he was lobstering then or still possibly doing some small farming. There was a barn down here in the field next to the house that was part of the farm that was owned by Julia and her husband Joseph W. Sperling. And that barn had several cows and horses and things. And there was some gardens around, but I don't know at what point my grandfather stopped doing that and sold the animals and went more to fishing, lobster fishing and such. I know there were stalls enough for probably, that I remember, 4 or 5 animals, maybe more. But normally here on the islanders didn't normally have more than 2 or 3 cows or 2 or 3 horses. Farming was dying out here on the islands by the 1920s, and most everybody was becoming more involved in just fishing, that type of economic enterprise.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Oh, it's so tart.
Take a swig, Sarah.
We got a bucket left.
Good to the last drop.
My name is Colleen Bunker. My father was born and raised on Great Cranberry Island, and I eventually made it back there in my very early 20s. I was married to Gary Allen. I did some farming out on Cranberry, did some other like most Islanders. I did a lot of everything. Because by that time, young people were starting to move away because there was nothing to do. It was hard to make a living. So fishing was declining, unless you had procured one of the coveted jobs in one of the boathouses. It's always been kind of difficult to make a living out there. When I moved to Cranberry, I was 20, and by then, no one was really growing any food of any amount. The first thing I did was to try to break up the soil and make a garden, get some soil going. I grew a lot of food,
Yeah.
mostly for myself and friends, and at the time I never thought of selling it or having a market garden or anything like that. But it wasn't until Gary fell and broke like 5 ribs while we were out working on someone else's property clearing land. When he was laid up with 5 broken ribs and we didn't, it's like, And I remember having all this excess lettuce, one time, and Patrick was just little, and we put it in a wagon, and he dragged it up to in front of Junior's house, and he sold it in like 3 minutes, and then Cabin Creek Farm was sort of born out of that. We went down, we cleared more land closer to Bob and Jack's or the Helliker Foundation, that area. We've got a couple of greenhouses. We built a solar greenhouse and launched ourselves. In Cabin Creek Farm, a lot of what we did was, we did grow some food, but where we really made our money was really still on the end of a shovel, in that we went and put in little gardens for people. We maintained, I did window boxes. We had bedding plants and shrubs so that people on Cranberry and Islesford, we grew all their, I got the petunias, the geraniums, they're all there, everything they needed for their summer bloom. I mean, we did sell some food, but that is, we didn't last long enough to really get into farming, if you know what I mean, in a way that would have been sustainable. It didn't last, maybe from like 93 through 95, really only 2 or 3 years. I'm thinking that we were in business. We did make some money on the food, not a lot. We've made a lot of money on mesclun and basil and tomatoes that Gary would just deliver in the boat early morning to the restaurants that he could get to by boat. The Assacu, the Claremont and Southwest, the Islesford Dock, all these places, it was kind of cool to have greens and different things from Cabin Creek Farm. There was a huge amount of potential, but we didn't stick with it long enough. It's a lot of work. It's physical work every day, all the time, and you just have to love it. Well, it's exciting to talk about because I still think the potential is there. I still think some young people or not so young people could have a lot of fun, and there's a need for sure.
My name is Wendy Ratcliffe, and I live here on the island, have for a number of years. When I started the farm, I did some research on what was rare heritage breeds, and went with the rare heritage breeds. If you can afford to buy them, you're helping to preserve this breed just by buying the breed, let alone whatever you do with it after that. So what I was doing was I was shipping eggs all over the country and helping people get into rare heritage birds. And I did that with everything that I have. I have chickens and ducks and geese and turkeys, and most of them are on the critical list or considered rare. With the AI that was such a big scare, the avian influenza that hit the turkeys, this is still going on all over the world. Okay, they're not really talking about it, but my connections, are still talking about it, are still very concerned. And there's other things that are going on out there that could have a drastic impact very quickly on production. And so my stock, most of my stock now, has come from breeders who have spent their entire life working on this one particular breed. Living here on the island, being surrounded by salt, gives us a degree of protection from at least the avian influenza due to the salt and avian influenza not being able to survive in those conditions. We're also not in a migratory flight path. So I have gotten stock from, like I said, the best of the best of the best out there. And they have said that they call me their little nest egg or their little genetic vault or whatever. They all have a different nickname for me. But I'm not interested in selling the stock. I'm not interested in trying to compete with them. I don't want to show. It's just for my own private little happy place. Breeds I have right now. I have Swedish flowers. I have the Orlandis dwarfs, silkies, salmon favorals, Cochins, Polish, Okia, Phoenix, Americanas, Woolies, Sorama, Old English Games, Seabrights, Cornish, Black-tailed buff japs. There's a couple more in there too. They all have their own purpose. Every single one. There's no bird that is like this perfect bird. That has all of the qualities. From the farm perspective. You want something that's big enough to eat, but has really high quality feathers so that you could use those for, like, say, fly ties. Has an amazing personality, lives a long time, produces eggs every day. You can't get it all in one bird. So you can't get all of those things in one chicken. So you have your Cochins for broodiness, you have your feathers are your Phoenix, your Okia, your genetic fly ties. You have your Americanas for pretty blue eggs and green eggs. You have, they all have their own little purpose. See, I even have, and I have some Leghorns because I know I'm going to get an egg every day out of them. My advice to somebody getting into it: start very small. Get half a dozen chicks or half a dozen birds and keep it small and then build from there. Chickens are the gateway drug to farming.
Is that what they say?
Oh, yeah. And the next thing you know, you want to try some quail or some geese or some turkeys or some ducks. And I think everybody ought to have at least a couple of chickens running around their yard. I think everybody ought to have at least a couple of geese and a couple of ducks, you know, and a couple of guinea hens. And the guinea hens are going to take care of all your ticks. Your Muscovy ducks are going to take care of all your mosquitoes. Your chickens are going to take care of everything in between. And the geese are going to mow your lawn. And the whole bunch of them are going to provide you with enough eggs that you won't have to buy any. And if you had at least a pair of each, you wouldn't have to buy meat. Because you could hatch it out.
Wow.
And it doesn't take much to feed 8 birds. And it's not for everybody, but it does give you a feeling of security. It helps your property. It can be wonderful entertainment. They're absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, when you say it all that way,
It can be relaxing to just sit there and watch them. It can be extremely relaxing.
Yeah, when you say it like that, it's kind of like, why not?
Sarah McCracken. I am 25 as of yesterday, March 7th. I originally lived in Leominster, Massachusetts for most of my life, and then went to College of the Atlantic. And then after took a summer job out here working for Janus Merch, and figured it would be a summer job, but then remained. It started out just doing her gardens and quickly snowballed into the apple orchards and animals and some babysitting here and there, like odd jobs. But we take care of, at this point, her 3 sheep, 30 some odd chickens, I think we have about 26 ducks, and like 300 or 400 apple trees, I think. Maybe, maybe more. I've lost track. Vegetable gardens and flower gardens around her house. As much as I like the work for Janus, there's also other things that I wanted. Mostly kind of like my own projects, so I really like farming and gardening, and I like doing it for Janus, but I definitely wanted to have a space of my own that I could work with as I wished. And I've for a long time thought that I wanted a farm. So I was feeling like if I wanted a farm, then how I wasn't going to get that out here, or that's how I felt. And so finally I hit this wall where I was like, I can't afford it, but do I need to own it? That popped into my head. And I realized that I didn't, and that there was a lot of land around here that wasn't being used, and because of the awesome tight-knit community and relationships that I had formed here, I could ask to use people's property without purchasing it for myself and still accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And that's something that I feel like you couldn't just do anywhere. I think that through the relationships that you form when you live closely with other people, you gain their trust, or they want to help you. That's how the Island Ecology Project started. We have 3 garden plots that are in other people's backyards. And in exchange for produce that we are growing, we're able to use that land. So the people that own the land get free produce from the gardens if they choose to eat it, use the garden. And then we are growing vegetables to supply a farm stand. Yeah, and then the money that we get from the farm stand funds our next year. And the farm stand is every Saturday. So basically me, Jesse, and Kayla take care of the 3 garden plots, and then on Friday gather all of our vegetables that are ready to go and wash them and dry them and put them in their little individual baggies or boxes or whatever we're using. And get them all set, and then we haul everything up to Janice's orchard because she's letting us use her space for our farm stand and set it all out for people to see. So we have a small stand, and then there's space for a couple more people to have their own little stands, and they usually bring like their own table and set up a display of vegetables or goods. And it's really cute. I think that we had so many goals when we started, but the composting made sense because it would provide us with our own compost, which was a huge expense for us in the first year. And then we have the ordinance, the town ordinance here, that you can't throw your organic matter in the trash to begin with. Our system is that we go around, well, we put 3 receptacles, trash cans, 3 different easy to access locations, one at the Cranberry House, one at the dump, and one at the Cranberry General Store where people can drop off their compost if they have it. And then we would go and pick it up. And then we, again, using the model of asking someone to use their space, we asked Sam Donald if we could use his land, or he offered it to us. He's awesome. And it's kind of in the woods, and we would drive the receptacles or the barrels back into the woods and dump them under a tarp.
Or we could talk, but we just can't.
And turn it as often as we felt inspired to do so. As much as we could. And we have 2 different piles right now. One's older that's sitting, and we should be able to use that in our gardens this year, and one that's in progress. I think that we are in this time where everyone thinks that farming is really hard. And it is to a certain extent, but I think that we're kind of being closed-minded in the model of farming that we're using right now, and that is like because one of the biggest factors of not being able to farm for young people today is like access to land, and it seems crazy that there isn't more. It's like a socialist movement, like, or we need to be more creative in how we're doing it and like how you're diversifying to make it financially feasible. And yeah, just don't lock yourself into this idea that you need to own the land that you're farming. I think is the biggest piece of advice that I would give. Yeah. It's part of this island's history to be involved in agriculture and getting food from the ocean and having a strong relationship to the ocean, and so yeah, I think as biased as I am, like, that's super important. Continuing that pattern, but I think it's important for everyone. So I think that regardless of being an island, it should be something that we all have a connection to.